Welcome to the debate. And hey, if you're joining us on the NFL Nexus channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment on what you thought about today's topic.
Yeah, definitely do that.
And also, you can become a channel member to get exclusive content and perks. Just click the join button below. So, getting into it. In the NFL, there's this, long-standing architectural philosophy when it comes to roster construction. You build a team kind of like a modern skyscraper, right?
Right. Sleek and tall.
Exactly. Lean, hyper-efficient, where every single beam, pillar, and player serves a really highly specific, load-bearing purpose. You want streamlined precision.
Absolutely.
But as we head into this 2026 season, head coach DeMeco Ryans and the Houston Texans are actively defying like a century of football logic. Instead of that sleek skyscraper, they've built what looks like this sprawling, overcrowded mansion with, 3 kitchens, 4 living rooms, and just overlapping redundancies everywhere you look.
Yeah, it's the absolute definition of a crowded house. You're looking at a team that seems to just be hoarding players at specific positions, completely abandoning the traditional, clean hierarchy of starters and backups.
Which brings us to the central question we're unpacking today. Have the Houston Texans brilliantly reloaded their offense by building the necessary depth and versatility required to survive a grueling NFL season?
Yeah.
Or have they created this inefficient, bloated roster that's going to stunt player development and put undue pressure on their quarterback? Based on the recent evaluations of their offseason moves, my stance is pretty clear. I believe the Texans' offseason moves, acquiring veteran power and stacking specialized depth, give them the ultimate adaptable offense needed for a Super Bowl run.
And my position is that this supposed depth is actually just a logjam that disrupts developing talent and honestly places dangerous systemic pressure on a quarterback still recovering from playoff trauma.
Well, let's lay out the foundation of how we're looking at this, starting with my perspective, right? What General Manager Nick Caserio and DeMeco Ryans are doing is, to me, a masterclass in building a robust, injury-resistant machine.
A masterclass? Wow.
It really is. In the modern NFL, attrition isn't just a possibility. It's a mathematical guarantee. You simply can't survive a 17-game season and a deep playoff push with just a starting 11. Look closely at their running back room, for instance.
Okay, let's look at it.
Bringing in a proven physical veteran like David Montgomery from the Detroit Lions to handle the bruising early down work is a brilliant calibration. It perfectly allows their 2025 rookie standout, Woody Marks, to thrive in a more optimized third down and passing game role.
Mm-hmm.
Then you look at the tight end room. Retaining 5 viable tight ends, Dalton Schultz, Foster Moreau, Brevin Jordan, Marlon Klein, and Cade Stover, is a feature, not a bug. It allows Ryans to dictate matchups on a truly granular level.
5 tight ends, though. 5.
5. Yeah. And finally, the engine of it all, C.J. Stroud. As former Pro Bowl quarterback Vince Young recently assessed, the adversity Stroud faced last year, specifically in the playoffs, is only going to make him a tougher, more prepared leader in 2026. This roster is built to insulate him, taking the pressure off his shoulders by attacking defenses from every conceivable angle.
Look, I come at it from a different way. I look at this Houston roster and I see a front office that is profoundly confusing roster bloat with strategic depth. And, in the process, they're risking their offensive rhythm entirely.
How so?
Well, let's examine that running back situation you just brought up. Woody Marks was absolutely fantastic for them as a rookie in 2025. I mean, he ran for 703 yards and 2 touchdowns in 16 games. And we have to remember, he did that despite incredibly poor, inconsistent play from the offensive line.
The line was rough. Yeah.
He was just hitting his stride, finally learning the speed of the professional game. So acquiring a high-volume veteran like David Montgomery risks completely stunning a young player who just proved he could shoulder the load.
But
In the tight end room, honestly, it borders on absurdity. Carrying 5 tight ends into a training camp battle when they only carried 2, Schultz and Stover, into week 1 of last year is a massive misallocation of resources.
Well, they had injuries.
It creates a bottleneck for practice reps, plain and simple. But my biggest concern by far is how all of this impacts C.J. Stroud. Surrounding your franchise quarterback with a congested, constantly rotating depth chart is exactly the wrong way to help him bounce back from his disastrous 4-interception playoff performance against the New England Patriots.
Right.
You don't help a recovering quarterback by making his personnel groupings exponentially more complicated.
Okay, let's dive right into that first point of contention, because I think the running back hierarchy is actually a perfect microcosm of our disagreement. You view the David Montgomery acquisition as an impediment to Woody Marks.
A huge one, yeah.
But I view it as the exact mechanism that will prolong Marks' career and maximize his efficiency. We know that Danny Barrett, the Texans running backs coach, publicly admitted that they brought Marks along slowly last year to help him process the game.
Right, and he did process it.
He did. Barrett noted that once Marks learned the blocking schemes, he played significantly faster.
Exactly. He figured it out, he processed the game, so why replace him on early downs?
Because it's not replacing, it's...
If you have a young back who has finally processed the complex blocking schemes of an NFL offense to the point where his physical speed matches his mental processing, you feed him the football. You let him eat.
Sure, in a perfect world, but...
You don't relegate him to a specialized third down and kick return role just to accommodate a newly acquired veteran. You're putting an artificial hard ceiling on Mark's potential just when he was about to break out.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. Think of an NFL running back room the way you would think of a Major League Baseball pitching rotation.
Okay, I'm listening.
You don't ask your elite, high-velocity closer to go out and throw 100 pitches in the first 5 innings of a game, because his biomechanics aren't built for it, right? The sheer wear and tear would destroy his arm.
Well, sure, in baseball.
It's the same for a running back. Taking 25 hits a game from 300-pound defensive linemen accumulates these micro-traumas over a season. Mark's confidence in the offense is, according to Barrett himself, at an all-time high. Preserving his elite speed, his lateral agility, and his burst strictly for the passing game and high-leverage third downs maximizes his specific physical trace.
But he's a running back. He needs the ball.
His superpower is making people miss in space. Montgomery is your innings eater. He handles the bruising between the tackles work that physically deteriorates backs over a season. Montgomery gives you early down win rates.
Right, but at what cost?
Well, if he's getting you 4 yards on first down, he's setting Marks up for success when he subs in on third manageable. Houston lacked that fundamental stability last year when their offensive line struggled.
Look, that pitching analogy is beautifully constructed, but is fundamentally flawed when applied to offensive football.
How so?
Baseball is a series of isolated, independent events. The pitcher throws, the batter swings, the play resets. Football, particularly offensive football, relies on a cumulative, sequential rhythm. A running back doesn't just execute a play in a vacuum,
They still need physical breaks, though.
Yes, but he gets a feel for the texture of the game. He feels the specific angle a defensive tackle is taking that day. He figures out the timing of his offensive line's double teams. He gauges how aggressive the linebackers are flowing downhill.
Right, I get the rhythm argument.
When you pull your young, explosive back off the field for first and second down, you're robbing him of the opportunity to establish that critical rhythm. He steps onto the field on 3rd and 8 completely cold, without having felt the defense.
I wouldn't say cold. Furthermore, Woody Marks proved he could handle adverse conditions. He got those 703 yards the hard way, grinding behind a bad line. By bringing in Montgomery, you're sending a devastating psychological message to your sophomore back that his hard-earned progress simply wasn't enough to secure his job.
But you're assuming professional athletes are, fragile in their confidence. By all accounts, Marks understands his role perfectly. Look, the modern NFL it's a committee backfield league.
Mostly.
Yes.
True.
Very few teams ride a single workhorse successfully into January without the wheels completely falling off. Let's look at the actual mechanics of how this helps the offense as a whole, okay? Montgomery gives the Texans a downhill, physical identity that forces opposing defenses to load the box on early downs.
True.
If the defense has to bring a safety down to respect Montgomery's power, they are fundamentally altering their coverage shell. That ironically creates lighter boxes, softer zones, and better passing lanes when Marks does sub in.
On 3rd down.
Right. It's complementary football at its finest. You use brute force to set up finesse.
It's complimentary on a whiteboard in a coaching room, but on the grass, it's highly disruptive. But hey, if you want to talk about how the running game dictates defensive personnel, we have to talk about the guys blocking on the edge.
Ah, the tight ends?
Yes. This tight end logjam is where the Texans' strategy really goes off the rails for me. Dalton Schultz is clearly TE1.
Absolutely.
He was their second leading receiver last year. He's trusted by Stroud, and they just rewarded him with a 1-year extension. That is completely settled. But behind him, you have an absolute traffic jam.
It's depth.
You have Foster Moreau, Brevin Jordan, who, by the way, is just returning from 2 years of brutal knee injuries, Cade Stover from last year's draft, and now they just spent a second-round pick on Marlon Klein.
Which is a brilliant accumulation of diverse talent.
It's a waste of draft capital.
A waste?
Yes. Let's be real about Marlon Klein. He's an older, largely unproven prospect out of Michigan who is already dealing with a hamstring injury that limited him in the offseason program.
Hamstrings heal.
When you spend a premium second-round pick on a player, you expect them to see the field immediately. But how does he see the field when he's battling 3 other veterans for TE2 snaps? You are manufacturing a training camp battle that will inevitably lead to you cutting talented players simply because there aren't enough chairs when the music stops.
Well, that's an interesting point, though. I would frame it differently. You're looking at it purely from an asset management perspective, but I look at this tight end room as a highly specialized strategic toolbox.
A toolbox of guys who won't play?
No, hear me out. You're right that Dalton Schultz is the foundational piece, but look at the differing mechanics and skill sets of the men behind him. Foster Moreau offers elite inline blocking. He can physically move a defensive end.
Sure.
But Brevin Jordan, on the other hand, has always possessed this dark horse receiving upside. He's a true seam stretcher who can force safeties to backpedal out of their zones. Marlon Klein possesses raw, elite physical traits that you simply cannot teach. DeMeco Ryans comes from the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, where the entire offense is predicated on the illusion of complexity.
But what does that actually mean in practice with 5 tight ends?
It means you dictate terms to the defense through personnel groupings. Let's say the Texans trot out a 13 personnel package, 1 running back, 3 tight ends.
Okay.
The defense looks at that heavy personnel and is forced to substitute their smaller, faster defensive backs for bigger, slower linebackers to defend the run. But if those 3 tight ends are Schultz, Jordan, and Klein, Stroud can suddenly audible, flex those tight ends out wide, and now you have 3 massive pass catchers running routes against heavy, flat-footed linebackers.
If they have time to sub, yeah.
It's a schematic nightmare for a defensive coordinator. Having multiple tight ends you can execute different concepts allows you to disguise your intentions perfectly. Yes, 5 tight ends won't make the final 53-man roster, but iron sharpens iron in training camp.
Right.
And honestly, let me ask you this. In a league where injuries routinely decimate tight end rooms by November, isn't it intellectual malpractice to not enter camp with a massive surplus of specialized talent?
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you what.
Go ahead.
Intellectual malpractice is failing to realize that cohesion requires repetition. It's a zero-sum game. There is a finite number of practice snaps available in an NFL training camp. Every single rep Foster Moreau takes is a rep Cade Stover loses.
They can rotate.
Every rep a hobbled Marlon Klein takes is a rep Brevin Jordan desperately needs to reintegrate into the offense after 2 long years away. You cannot build a cohesive offensive rhythm when players are fighting tooth and nail for manufactured, highly situational sub-package snaps.
Well, competition brings out the best.
Let's look at recent history. The Texans opened last season with 2 tight ends on the roster. 2, Schultz and Stover. They operated just fine. Jumping from 2 to 5 legitimate contenders for the 53-man roster isn't a surplus, it's a massive distraction.
I disagree. It splits the coach and staff's attention, dilutes the quality of instruction, and prevents the actual starters from building vital, unspoken chemistry with their quarterback.
See, I think you're underestimating the capacity of this coaching staff to manage personnel. DeMeco Ryans is entering his 4th year. He has firmly established the culture in that building.
He's a defensive guy, though.
He understands exactly how to allocate reps to evaluate bubble talent without sacrificing the preparation of the starters. This is precisely what elite teams do. They create intense competitive environments in July and August so that the product in December is battle-tested and resilient.
But all of this personnel rotation, the running backs, the 5 tight ends, who is the guy actually managing it at the line of scrimmage?
Stroud is. Exactly. The product in December is only as good as the man throwing the football, which brings us to the absolute most critical flaw in this grand design, C.J. Stroud.
Really? See, Stroud is exactly why I'm so confident in this roster. You look at how his 2025 season ended, that divisional round loss to the New England Patriots, where he threw 4 interceptions.
Oof, yeah, that was rough.
People want to frame that as a permanent psychological scar, but I look at it as the necessary crucible of greatness. Vince Young, a quarterback who knows a thing or two about the suffocating pressures of the NFL, said it perfectly.
What did he say?
He said Stroud is a guy who does everything right, and that going through that specific kind of agonizing adversity is going to make him a substantially tougher player. Stroud has completely tuned out the external noise, he has put his head down, worked on his body, and is mentally prepared for a high expectation season.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered the actual functional burden you're placing on his shoulders?
How so? He's got more weapons.
I'm not questioning CJ Stroud's work ethic, and I'm not questioning his toughness. I'm questioning the environment the Texans are actively building around a player who just experienced a profound historic professional trauma.
Calling it a trauma is a bit much.
4 interceptions in a playoff game isn't just a bad day at the office. Mechanically, it alters how a quarterback processes coverage. It makes a player start double clutching. Instead of throwing with anticipation, he starts waiting to explicitly see the receiver open before letting the ball go.
He's better than that.
He starts second-guessing his own trigger. When a quarterback is trying to rebuild his confidence and recalibrate his field vision, the last thing you want to give him is a chaotic, constantly rotating cast of characters.
But Stroud is an elite processor. That's his defining trait. He thrives when he has multiple answers to a defensive test.
But you're giving him a roulette wheel. If you have Woody Marks coming in on 3rd down, David Montgomery subbing in on 1st down, and 4 different tight ends rotating through the formation depending on the micro situation, you're forcing Stroud to constantly adjust.
That's what elite quarterbacks do.
Every single receiver has unique speed, a different catch radius, and different body language at the top of their route stem. You're adding a massive cognitive load to a quarterback who should be given the simplest, most consistent environment possible to rebuild his rhythm.
Shanahan's system is built for this.
Yes, DeMeco Ryans has that Shanahan pedigree, but even Shanahan relies on a core group of undeniable everyday staples to anchor his quarterback. The Texans are asking Stroud to be a supercomputer, processing not just the complex defensive coverages, but his own wildly unpredictable personnel groupings on every single snap.
Look, I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning, because it treats CJ Stroud like a fragile rookie, rather than a seasoned franchise quarterback entering his prime.
I'm not saying he's fragile. I'm saying he's human.
The reason you provide a quarterback with diverse weapons is specifically so that he doesn't have to force the ball into tight, predictable windows. Let's analyze those 4 interceptions against the Patriots.
Okay, let's.
They happened largely because the Houston offense became one-dimensional and predictable. The Patriots' defense knew exactly where the ball was going, and they jumped the routes. By having Montgomery pound the rock on 1st down, you pull the linebackers forward.
Right.
By having specialized tight ends who can either block aggressively or stretch the seam, you dictate the defensive personnel. Stroud doesn't have to be a supercomputer calculating variables post-snap. He just has to read the pre-snap leverage, which is his greatest strength.
Assuming the personnel grouping works as intended.
Having a deep, varied arsenal actually simplifies his post-snap reads because the scheme itself generates the open man. Vince Young was right. When you face that level of adversity, you learn how to protect the football mechanically. You learn to take what the defense gives you instead of playing hero ball. And with this deep roster, the defense will be mathematically forced to give up a lot of easy completions.
Taking what the defense gives you requires an innate, almost telepathic trust with your pass catchers, though.
Which they'll build in camp.
It requires knowing exactly when your tight end is going to break off his route against zone coverage. That trust is built through thousands of cumulative reps in practice and in games. When you split those crucial reps among 5 tight ends and multiple running backs, you dilute the chemistry.
You can build chemistry with more than 2 guys.
And let's look at the reality of Marlon Klein again. You spent a 2nd-round pick on him. There is immense organizational pressure from the front office to justify that draft pick, meaning he will almost certainly be forced onto the field.
Well, if he earns it.
That potentially takes live game snaps away from Dalton Schultz or Cade Stover, players Stroud already trusts implicitly. The front office is prioritizing asset management and draft grade optics over the actual organic flow of the offense.
Asset management is how you survive in a salary cap league. You can't pay everyone top dollar, which means you continually need young,
cheap talent pushing the veterans from behind.
But you don't need a log jam.
Stroud understands this business reality. The entire organization is aligned on this philosophy from Caserio down to the coaching staff.
Alignment in the front office doesn't automatically equal execution on the field. Danny Barrett talking about how confident Woody Marks is right now is great PR. But what happens to that confidence in Week 4 when Montgomery gets stuffed at the goal line twice and Marks is standing on the sideline with his helmet in his hand, knowing with absolute certainty he could have beaten the linebacker to the pylon?
That's just a hypothetical scenario.
Football is a game of emotion, ego, and momentum, just as much as it is a game of X's and O's.
That's exactly why you have a head coach like D'Amico Ryans. He's a former elite linebacker who understands the locker room pulse better than anyone in the league.
I'll give you that. He's a great leader.
He manages the egos. He manages the deployment. He knows how to push the right psychological buttons.
Ryans is a defensive coach by trade. He's trusting his offensive staff to manage this massive bloat. And I genuinely fear the sheer complexity of it all is going to collapse on itself under the crushing weight of playoff expectations.
Well, as we draw this discussion to a close, let me summarize my perspective on where the Houston Texans currently stand.
Go for it.
General manager Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans have intentionally built a roster capable of attacking NFL defenses in multiple highly specific ways. They've recognized that versatility is the ultimate weapon. The veteran, bruising presence of David Montgomery in the backfield perfectly complements the electric speed of Woody Marks, preserving the young back for high-leverage moments.
The intense, iron-sharpens-iron competition at the tight end position ensures they will field the most dynamic, matchup-proof unit possible. And above all, C.J. Stroud's tested mental toughness, forged in the fires of that painful playoff loss, is the exact ingredient required to orchestrate this deep, adaptable roster toward a deep postseason run. They aren't bloated, they're meticulously armed for a 17-game war of attrition.
And my summary remains that complexity does not automatically equal quality. The Texans are playing a dangerous, unnecessary game of roster Tetris, disrupting a young, ascending running back's development to force a veteran into the mix just fractures the offense's rhythm.
Right.
Mismanaging valuable draft capital on an overcrowded tight end room creates internal friction and severely dilutes practice reps. And most critically, assuming your young quarterback will seamlessly shake off a historic playoff collapse while simultaneously asking him to manage a hyper-complex, constantly rotating cast of skill players is a recipe for systemic failure. They've built a machine with far too many moving parts, and when you do that, it only takes one slipping gear for the whole engine to seize.
It really is a fascinating dichotomy. On one hand, we're analyzing this roster from a macro strategic perspective, looking at the sheer volume of talent, the analytics of early down win rates, and the situational advantages of heavy personnel groupings.
Yeah. And on the other hand, we're forced to look at the micro-developmental perspective, how individual players, specifically C.J. Stroud and Woody Marks, emotionally and mechanically process these sweeping changes.
Exactly.
And the truth is, all the whiteboard theory in the world hits a brick wall when training camp cuts begin. That's when we'll see if this was truly a master plan of strategic depth, or if they're just desperately trying to trim the fat off a misguided, bloated offseason.
The true answer lies in the material yet to unfold on the practice fields in Houston. We invite all of you to form your own conclusions as you watch this fascinating roster take shape over the coming weeks. As we leave you today, I want you to think back to that architectural blueprint we discussed at the beginning of the show. Are the Houston Texans building an indestructible, multifaceted fortress capable of surviving any storm? Or have they designed a sprawling mansion so incredibly confusing that even their own quarterback might get lost in the hallways? Thank you for joining us on The Debate.